Hi, my name is Ryan Ammett. I'm going to provide you with a presentation on culture and emergency management. To begin, it is important to define culture as it relates to emergency management. Erickson and Merriam-Webster note that emergency management culture includes behaviors, beliefs, power structures, and other social practices in the field of emergency management. It is important to distinguish between the two separate yet intertwined cultures significant to emergency management. Schneider defines these two cultures as orientation of disaster victims and bureaucratic norms. The first being the individual resident's culture or orientation. This plays an incredible role in shaping the outcome of emergency management response. For example, an individual or community with inherent distrust of government, as reflected by their beliefs, behaviors, and norms, will typically be less likely to take steps to mitigate a potential disaster. However, a community with progressive and engaged citizenry will typically participate in training exercises, take heed of government official warnings, and are more likely to provide mutual support. This brings about an interesting challenge for emergency management officials, especially in the United States where there is no cultural homogeneity. It is crucial during the planning phase that officials take into account various cultural norms and the impact they may have on all phases of emergency management. All officials must be culturally competent for an effective emergency management, which brings about a second separate yet interconnected culture important to the effective emergency management. Bureaucratic norms or the organizational culture of the emergency management team affects the outcome of disaster mitigation and response. In order to provide some type of standardization, FEMA implemented an initiative called the Whole Community Approach. Provided on the slide is an excerpt from the FEMA website, and as you can see, it highlights collaboration and education of demographic characteristics and motivations. Building relationships at all levels of government is very important. I would argue it is a responsibility of the local emergency management officials to not only maintain these relationships with other government entities like the state and federal government, but also community stakeholders. And as we have discussed in case studies throughout the semester, a majority of these successful cases is due to community input, which relates back to the overall social norms or culture of the community and the individuals which make up the community. An effective organizational culture not only seeks out and understands society's culture, but fosters a collaborative approach to the power structure of the organization. Although this may be beyond the scope of this presentation, it is important to note that emergency management response works best when following a bottom-up approach where the state and the federal government does not impede local efforts, but provides necessary resources to more effective execution of local efforts. This starts with the overall organizational culture within the emergency management team. Maybe the most impacted aspect of emergency management affected by cultural differences is the communication. Schneider provides an example of communication deficiencies due to cultural incompetence in the Northridge earthquake. Aid workers were unable to provide adequate response and resources due to a systematic-wide lack of Spanish speakers. This could have been mitigated if a whole community approach was implemented in planning for such a disaster. Although throughout this presentation we have discussed the cultural differences across the nation or even across the world, but it's important to note that cultural differences exist even within our own town, and just like I discussed above, they require the same amount of attention. For example, an emergency management response at Florida State University campus would be significantly different than a response at the homeless shelter on Tennessee Street. Just to provide some questions for y'all to engage the class and to provide some feedback and to start a discussion, I have a couple questions I would like to ask. First, what cultural differences do you believe would be critical to understand, document, and plan for in order to provide an effective response to both situations mentioned above, those being the emergency at the Florida State University campus and the homeless shelter? And second question, do you anticipate any challenges to an effective response to both of these situations? To conclude, I want to provide you with a quote that encompasses the idea of cultural diversity and cultural acceptance. Robert Allen, an American writer, said, "Cultural differences should not separate us from each other, but rather cultural diversity brings a collective strength that can benefit all of humanity." I hope you enjoy this presentation. I hope it was informative, and thank you very much for watching.